Emily Carter had dreamed of this moment since she was a little girl. The grand ballroom of the Riverside Manor sparkled under 1,000 crystal lights, each one casting dancing reflections across the polished marble floors. White roses cascaded from every corner, their petals scattered along the ivory runner that stretched toward the altar like a path to paradise. The air was thick with their perfume, mixed with expensive candles that burned in ornate holders along each row. A string quartet, flown in specially from Seattle, played softly as 200 guests sat in perfect rows, dressed in their finest, whispering admirations about the elegance of it all. Every detail had been meticulously planned over 8 months. Emily had hired the best wedding planner in Portland, someone who'd coordinated celebrations for tech executives and old money families. No expense had been spared. The invitations alone had cost $3,000, hand-lettered on Italian paper with gold leaf accents. Emily stood before the floor-length mirror in the bridal suite, barely recognizing herself. Her gown was a masterpiece of French lace and silk, custom-made in Paris by a designer whose name she'd once only read in magazines. It had required 3 fittings and cost more than a car. Her hair was swept into an intricate updo that had taken 2 hours to perfect, adorned with tiny diamonds that caught the light with every breath. Her makeup artist, someone who worked with celebrities, had spent another 2 hours perfecting her face until she looked like she'd stepped out of a fairy tale. She looked like a princess, like someone who'd finally arrived at the life she was meant to live. This was it, the moment that would prove she'd made it. That the girl from the small town who'd grown up in a house that smelled like cleaning products had transformed into someone who mattered, someone who belonged in rooms like this, among people like these. Daniel Hayes waited for her at the altar. Even from the bridal suite, Emily could picture him there, tall, handsome, impeccably dressed in a custom tuxedo from London. His family owned 3 luxury hotels across the Pacific Northwest, and his name opened doors Emily had once only dreamed of walking through. She'd met him at a business conference in Portland 2 years ago, and from the first conversation, she knew he was her ticket to the world she deserved. He was successful, connected, respected, everything she'd worked so hard to become. Her phone, sitting on the vanity beside her champagne glass, buzzed with notifications. Instagram was already flooded with photos from guests. Professional photographers she'd hired were capturing every moment. The hashtag Emily and Daniel Forever was trending locally. She'd checked it 3 times already, watching the likes climb, reading the envious comments. Everything was perfect. The wedding planner knocked softly on the door. "Miss Carter, it's time." Emily took one last look at herself in the mirror, smoothed an invisible wrinkle from her dress, touched her hair one final time, and stepped into the hallway. Her bridesmaids, all 6 of them carefully selected from her new social circle in Portland, flanked her with practiced smiles. She'd chosen them strategically, women who looked good in photographs, who had the right connections, who understood the importance of appearances. The double doors to the ballroom opened, and the quartet shifted seamlessly into the wedding march. Every head turned. Emily walked down the aisle with her chin high, her spine straight, her bouquet of white peonies, imported from Holland, held just so. Cameras flashed from every angle. People smiled. Tears glistened on some faces, though Emily suspected they were crying because weddings were supposed to make you cry, not because they actually cared. Daniel watched her approach with an expression that might have been admiration, or might have been satisfaction, or might have been simple acknowledgement that the show was proceeding as planned. She couldn't quite tell the difference anymore, but it didn't matter. They looked good together, everyone said so. The ceremony was flawless. The officiant, someone Daniel's family had used for generations, spoke about love and commitment in carefully rehearsed phrases that sounded meaningful but said nothing personal. Emily and Daniel exchanged vows she'd hired a writer to craft, beautiful words about partnership and devotion that had tested well with her bridesmaids. They sounded romantic, poetic, The kind of words that would play well in the wedding video she'd already planned to post in strategic snippets over the next month. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, the room erupted in applause. Daniel kissed her with perfect pressure, perfect duration, perfect angle for the photographer's position just right. The reception began immediately after. Waiters in crisp white jackets circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres that cost $12 per piece. The 4-tier cake, a work of art covered in edible flowers and gold leaf, stood on a table draped in silk. The live band, a jazz ensemble that usually played at upscale clubs in the city, filled the room with sophisticated music. Everything flowed seamlessly from one moment to the next, exactly as Emily had orchestrated. She moved through the crowd like royalty, accepting congratulations, air-kissing cheeks, posing for endless photos. Daniel's business partners complimented her taste. His mother, a woman who'd been coolly polite during the entire engagement, actually smiled and said the wedding was quite lovely. Emily's own business acquaintances, people she'd cultivated carefully over the past 2 years, clinked glasses and promised to schedule lunch dates they'd probably never keep. Emily felt the weight of success settling comfortably on her shoulders. This was what she'd worked for. This validated every choice, every sacrifice, every relationship she'd left behind on her climb upward. She was in the middle of a conversation with Daniel's business partner, a man who owned a chain of boutique hotels, discussing potential marketing opportunities when she saw movement near the entrance. The ballroom doors, massive oak things with brass handles, opened slowly. An elderly woman stood just inside the doorway, one hand clutching the strap of a small cloth purse, the other trembling slightly at her side. She wore a lilac dress that had clearly seen better days, the fabric slightly faded in places where the sun had touched it too often, the hem fraying at the edges where it had been mended and remended. Her shoes were clean but old, the leather cracked despite obvious care. Her grey hair was neatly combed but simply styled, pulled back with a plain clip. She wore no jewelry except for a small silver cross on a thin chain, the same cross she'd worn for as long as Emily could remember. She looked around the opulent ballroom with wide eyes, as if she'd stumbled into a palace by mistake. Her gaze swept over the chandeliers, the flowers, the elegantly dressed guests, and Emily could see the moment her grandmother realized just how out of place she was. Emily's heart stopped. No, not here, not today, not now. Margaret, her grandmother. The conversations around Emily seemed to dim, as if someone had turned down the volume on the entire room. She felt people beginning to notice, heads turning subtly, eyes shifting, whispers starting like a slow wave rippling outward from the entrance. She could see it in their faces, the questions forming behind polite smiles. Who is that? Why is she dressed like that? Does she belong here? Is she lost? Emily had not sent her grandmother an invitation. She'd made that decision months ago during the first round of planning, when she'd been sitting with her wedding planner going through the guest list. Her grandmother's name had come up, and Emily had said no, quickly, firmly, without explanation. She'd told herself it was because Margaret wouldn't feel comfortable in such a formal setting, that she'd be happier staying home in her small house in Riverside, that a 4-hour drive would be too much for someone her age, that it was for the best. For everyone. The truth, the one Emily barely admitted even to herself in the darkest hours of night, was simpler and crueler. Margaret didn't fit the image. She was a reminder of a past Emily had worked so hard to leave behind. A past of hand-me-down clothes and second-hand textbooks and shoes from the discount bin at Walmart. Of living in a tiny house that always smelled like the harsh cleaning products Margaret used at other people's homes. Of being the girl whose parents had abandoned her when she was 6, who'd been raised by a grandmother too poor to afford anything but love and determination. Margaret's eyes scanned the crowd, searching. Then they found Emily across the room, and her weathered face lit up with a trembling smile. A smile full of pride and hope and unconditional love. Emily's stomach twisted into a knot so tight she thought she might be sick. She excused herself from the conversation with Daniel's business partner, her voice somehow remaining steady and polite. Then she walked toward her grandmother, her wedding gown swishing with each step, feeling the weight of hundreds of eyes following her movement. The room seemed to watch, conversations pausing mid-sentence, champagne glasses frozen halfway to lips. Daniel glanced over from where he stood with his groomsmen near the bar. His expression flickered with something that might have been concern, or might have been embarrassment, or might have been calculation. He didn't move toward her, didn't offer support, just watched, waiting to see how she'd handle this unexpected disruption. Emily reached her grandmother and gently took her elbow, feeling the familiar thinness of her arm through the worn fabric. She guided her away from the main crowd, toward a quiet corner near the coat check, away from the photographers, away from the scrutiny. "Grandma," Emily said, her voice low and tight, barely above a whisper. "Why are you here?" Margaret's smile wavered, but held. Her eyes, those same grey-blue eyes that had watched Emily take her first steps, that had stayed awake during countless homework sessions, that had cried happy tears at her high school graduation, shone with emotion. "I wanted to see you, sweetheart. On your special day, you look so beautiful, like an angel." "You'll embarrass me," Emily whispered, glancing over her shoulder. She could see people still watching, pretending not to watch. "Look at this place. Look at these people. You don't belong here." The words hung in the air between them like poison, acrid and undeniable. Margaret's face crumpled, just slightly, but enough for Emily to see the hurt bloom in her grandmother's eyes. Those same eyes that had looked at her with such love when she was small and afraid. That had reassured her that being abandoned by her parents didn't mean she was unlovable. That had promised her that hard work and kindness would see her through. "I just wanted to see you happy," Margaret said softly, her voice breaking on the last word. "I am happy," Emily hissed, her jaw clenched. "But I don't want you in any pictures. I don't want people asking questions about who you are, where you're from. Please, just leave." Margaret stood very still for a moment. The music played on in the ballroom behind them. Laughter echoed from somewhere near the dance floor. Someone clinked a glass repeatedly, calling for the bride and groom to kiss, and the crowd erupted in encouraging applause. Then Margaret nodded slowly, as if her head had suddenly become very heavy. "I understand," she whispered. She turned toward the door, her shoulders bent forward, her steps small and careful as if she'd aged 10 years in the last minute. Emily watched her go, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard it hurt. A few guests near the entrance noticed Margaret leaving, their expressions puzzled, curious. Emily saw Daniel's mother lean towards someone and whisper behind her perfectly manicured hand, eyebrows raised. Outside the tall windows, rain had begun to fall. Thick, heavy drops that ran down the glass in rivulets. Margaret pushed open the heavy door and stepped out into the storm. She didn't have an umbrella. She didn't have a coat, despite the early autumn chill. She didn't look back, not even once. Emily stood frozen in the corner for a long moment, watching the door slowly close behind her grandmother. Then she straightened her spine, touched her perfect hair with trembling fingers, adjusted her perfect dress, and walked back into her perfect wedding reception. Daniel appeared at her side almost immediately. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice neutral, already moving past the moment. "Everything's fine," Emily said, lifting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter and drinking half of it in one swallow. "Just someone who got confused. Wrong event." He nodded, seemingly satisfied with the explanation, and guided her toward the dance floor for their first dance as husband and wife. The band shifted into their chosen song, something romantic and sweeping. Daniel's hand rested on the small of her back. Emily's hand settled on his shoulder. They moved in practiced steps they'd rehearsed 3 times with a choreographer, turning in slow circles while guests formed a ring around them, phones raised, capturing every angle. As they swayed to the music, Emily caught her reflection in one of the ballroom's ornate mirrors. She looked beautiful, successful, radiant, like she'd finally arrived at the life she was meant to live. She didn't understand why her chest felt so hollow, or why, when she closed her eyes, all she could see was her grandmother's face disappearing into the rain, or why the weight of success she'd been feeling just moments ago now felt more like a weight of something else entirely, something that felt uncomfortably close to shame. The honeymoon in Bali lasted 2 weeks and produced 347 Instagram posts. Emily documented everything with meticulous care. The overwater bungalow with its glass floor, revealing tropical fish swimming lazily below. The sunrise yoga sessions on the pristine white sand beach, her silhouette perfectly positioned against the orange sky. The couple's massage at the 5-star spa where everything smelled like jasmine and money. The elaborate meals at restaurants where a single dinner cost more than Margaret's weekly grocery budget. Daniel beside her in every carefully filtered photo, his arm around her waist, his smile camera-ready and perfectly calibrated. Her followers loved it. Comments poured in by the thousands, a flood of validation that Emily checked compulsively between activities. Goals. You two are perfect. Living the dream. This is what true love looks like. Hearts and fire emojis filled the screen until they blurred together into a digital standing ovation. Emily replied to dozens of them each day, carefully crafting responses that sounded genuine and grateful, while maintaining just the right amount of aspirational distance. She was living the dream. She had to be. She'd worked too hard, sacrificed too much, climbed too far for it to be anything else. But at night, after the cameras were put away and the phones charged on opposite nightstands, Daniel turned his back to her and fell asleep without a word. The sound of the ocean through the open windows felt less romantic and more like white noise filling an uncomfortable silence that stretched between them like an invisible wall. Emily told herself it was normal. They were both tired. Weddings were exhausting. The stress of the planning, the expectations, the performance of it all. They'd find their rhythm once they settled into married life, once the pressure eased, once things became routine. When they returned to Portland, they moved into Daniel's downtown penthouse. It occupied the entire top floor of a glass tower that scraped the sky with views of the city stretching out in every direction like a kingdom laid at their feet. Everything was sleek, modern, expensive in that understated way that only truly wealthy people understood. Chrome fixtures that gleamed like mirrors, Italian marble in the bathrooms, cool and perfect, furniture that looked like art installations, beautiful but somehow uninviting. A kitchen with appliances Emily didn't know how to use, all stainless steel and touch screens. Emily had sold her small apartment in northwest Portland before the wedding, boxing up her life into storage bins she'd probably never open again. Her modest furniture, her college textbooks, her collection of thrift store finds that had once made her proud. All of it packed away like evidence of a past she was meant to forget. Now her clothes hung in a walk-in closet the size of her old bedroom, organized by color and seasoned by a professional organizer Daniel had hired. She woke up each morning to sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The city spread below her like a map of possibility. She should have felt like a queen. Instead, she felt like a guest in someone else's home. A guest who hadn't quite learned the rules yet. Daniel left for work before she woke up. She'd hear the shower running in the master bathroom sometimes, through the fog of sleep, and by the time she opened her eyes, he'd be gone. A coffee cup in the sink, the faint smell of his cologne lingering in the hallway, the sound of the elevator descending. He came home after she'd already eaten dinner alone, reheating whatever Maria, their housekeeper, had prepared and left in labeled containers. Grilled salmon with asparagus, chicken piccata, pasta primavera. All of it delicious, and all of it tasting like loneliness. Daniel would pour himself a scotch from the crystal decanter in the living room, settle into his leather chair, and scroll through his phone for an hour. Sometimes he'd check his laptop. Always he'd be absorbed in something that didn't include her. "How was your day?" Emily would ask from the sofa, her voice sounding too loud in the quiet penthouse. "Fine," he'd say without looking up. "Yours?" "Busy," she'd reply, even when she hadn't been, and that would be the extent of their conversation before he retreated to his office or to bed, leaving Emily alone with her wine glass and the view of the city lights. Emily threw herself into building her own business to fill the emptiness. She'd started a boutique marketing firm specializing in luxury brands, leveraging Daniel's connections to land her first clients. His name opened doors. His introductions secured meetings. His reputation gave her credibility she hadn't earned yet. She worked from home, taking calls in the spare bedroom she'd converted into an office, its walls painted a soft grey, a large desk facing the window. She built proposals late into the night, crafted campaigns, pitched ideas to companies that sold things most people couldn't afford: high-end watches, designer furniture, exclusive resort memberships. The work was good, intellectually engaging. The money was good, better than she'd imagined possible. Her client list grew steadily through the fall and into winter. But at the end of each day, she'd close her laptop and walk into the cavernous living room, where Daniel sat scrolling through his phone, and the space between them felt wider than the room itself, wider than the city below, wider than anything she knew how to cross. Months passed in a blur of routine and distance. Emily attended charity galas in designer gowns, standing beside Daniel as he networked with Portland's elite. She smiled at the right moments, laughed at the right jokes, played the role of the successful wife perfectly. She learned which wines to order, which causes to support, which names to drop in conversation. She posted photos that made their life look enviable, because it was enviable. Anyone would want this life. Anyone would be grateful. She met other wives at brunches in Pearl District restaurants with exposed brick and craft cocktails. They talked about vacation homes in Bend and Cannon Beach, about personal trainers and nutritionists, and which dermatologists were worth the waiting list, about their husbands' businesses and upcoming galas and private school options for children most of them didn't have yet. Emily nodded along, contributing stories about her and Daniel's life that sounded true enough, about romantic dinners that never happened, about inside jokes they didn't share, about a partnership that existed only in her carefully constructed narrative. But none of them were friends, not really. They were acquaintances performing friendship, just like Emily was performing happiness. They exchanged phone numbers and promises to get together soon, promises that dissolved like sugar in water the moment they parted. At night, she lay awake in the king-sized bed, Daniel's breathing steady on his side. They'd stopped touching even accidentally in sleep, and stared at the ceiling. The penthouse was climate-controlled, always perfectly 72 degrees, but Emily felt cold in a way that had nothing to do with temperature. Sometimes, without meaning to, her mind wandered back to her grandmother's house. The small kitchen with the linoleum floor that curled at the edges, and the table that wobbled unless you put a folded napkin under one leg. The round table where they'd eaten dinner together every single night, Margaret asking about school, listening with genuine interest to Emily's rambling stories about teachers and friends and dreams that seemed big then, but felt small now. The house had always been warm, not from any expensive heating system, but from something Emily couldn't quite name. Something that seemed absent from her life now, despite having everything she'd ever wanted. She remembered Margaret's hands, weathered and strong, cutting vegetables for soup, the sound of her humming while she cooked, the way she'd always set two places at the table, never just one, because we eat together in this house. Emily pushed the thoughts away with practiced efficiency. That was the past. She'd outgrown it. This was better, more sophisticated, more successful. It had to be better. One evening in late February, 6 months after the wedding, Emily made reservations at Le Pigeon, one of Portland's most exclusive restaurants. She'd barely seen Daniel all week. He'd been in Seattle for business meetings, and she thought maybe a nice dinner, just the two of them, might help. Might remind them why they'd gotten married in the first place, if she could even remember anymore. She wore a black dress that cost more than Margaret's monthly rent used to be. She did her makeup carefully, the way the professionals had taught her during wedding prep. She arrived at the restaurant early, ordered a bottle of wine she knew Daniel liked, waited at their table by the window overlooking the city. Daniel showed up 40 minutes late. "Sorry," he said, sliding into his chair without kissing her hello. Meeting ran long. He didn't elaborate on what meeting. He didn't ask about her day. He checked his phone 3 times during the appetizer course, twice during the main course. When Emily tried to talk about maybe taking a trip together, somewhere quiet, just the two of them, maybe back to the Oregon coast where they'd gone early in their relationship, he nodded vaguely and said, "We'll see. Things are busy right now." "Things are always busy," Emily said quietly. "That's how business works," Daniel replied, not looking up from his phone. They were home by 9. Daniel went straight to his office and closed the door with a soft click that sounded like a period at the end of a sentence. Emily stood in the living room, surrounded by luxury, and felt the weight of loneliness settle over her like a blanket she couldn't shake off. The penthouse was spotless. Maria had been there that day. Everything gleamed. Everything was in its place. Everything was perfect and empty and cold. She poured herself a glass of wine and walked to the windows. The city glittered below, thousands of lights in thousands of windows. All those people living their lives. All those stories she'd never know. All that connection happening somewhere she couldn't reach. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. Another Instagram notification. Someone had commented on her restaurant photo from earlier, the one she'd posted of their appetizer with the caption, "Date night with my favorite person." The comment read, "You guys are relationship goals, so lucky." Emily stared at the comment for a long moment, the words blurring slightly. Then she set down her phone, finished her wine in 3 long swallows, and poured another glass. The penthouse was always perfectly quiet. No creaking floors, no sounds of life, no laughter or conversation or signs that people actually lived here. Just the hum of expensive appliances and the whisper of climate-controlled air moving through invisible vents. Emily had everything she'd ever chased: the successful husband, the luxury home, the thriving business, the Instagram feed that made people envious, the life that looked perfect from every angle. And somehow, somewhere along the way, she'd lost the only thing that had ever made her feel like she actually mattered. She didn't let herself think about what that thing might have been, or who. Not yet. But on nights like this, standing alone at the window while her husband worked behind a closed door, the thought crept in anyway. The thought that maybe, just maybe, she'd traded everything real for something that only looked real. And the price of that trade was higher than she'd ever imagined. The crack in Emily's perfect life began with a sound she wasn't supposed to hear. It was a Tuesday evening in late autumn. Rain tapped against the penthouse windows, and the city below was shrouded in grey mist. Emily had finished work early for once and decided to cook dinner herself, something she hadn't done in months. The housekeeper had left fresh salmon in the refrigerator, and Emily thought maybe a home-cooked meal might make the evening feel less empty. She was in the kitchen, chopping vegetables, when she heard Daniel's voice from his office down the hall. He was laughing. The sound stopped her mid-cut. She couldn't remember the last time she'd heard him laugh like that. Free, genuine, the kind of laughter that came from actual joy, not polite amusement at a client's joke. Emily set down the knife and wiped her hands on a towel. She told herself she was just going to ask if he wanted wine with dinner. That was all. A simple question. She walked down the hallway, her footsteps silent on the plush carpet. Daniel's office door was closed, but not completely. A thin line of light spilled through the gap. His voice came through clearly. I know, he said, still laughing. You should have seen their faces when I made the counteroffer. Priceless. A pause. He was on the phone. Emily's hand hovered near the door. She should knock. She should announce herself. This was her husband. She had nothing to hide, and neither did he. But something in his tone made her hesitate. Tomorrow night works, Daniel continued. Same place as last time. Perfect. Emily's stomach tightened. I'll make sure I'm free, he said, his voice dropping lower, more intimate. I've been thinking about you all day. The words hit Emily like a physical blow. She pressed her palm against the wall to steady herself. There was another pause, longer this time. Daniel laughed again, softer now. She's fine, busy with her little marketing thing. Honestly, she barely notices when I'm around anyway. Emily's breath caught in her throat. Look, Daniel said, his voice shifting to something harder, more calculated. She's useful right now. The connections she brought, the optics of the marriage, it all plays well with the investors. But once the Riverside merger goes through, once everything's signed and finalized, I'll be done with her. She's too self-absorbed to even notice what's happening. The hallway tilted. Emily grabbed the doorframe, her knuckles white. Trust me, Daniel continued. Another few months tops. Then we can stop sneaking around. She's not exactly difficult to fool. Too busy posting pictures of our fake perfect life to see what's right in front of her. He laughed again, and the sound made Emily's skin crawl. I know. You're right. She is pretty arrogant. Thought she was marrying up, getting access to my world. Didn't realize she was just another business move. Emily backed away from the door slowly, carefully, as if any sound might shatter her into pieces. Her heart hammered so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. Her hands shook. She made it back to the kitchen on autopilot. The salmon sat on the cutting board, half prepared. The vegetables were scattered across the counter. Everything looked exactly as she'd left it moments ago, but everything had changed. Emily gripped the edge of the counter and stared at her reflection in the darkened window. The woman looking back at her wore expensive clothes and perfect makeup. She lived in a penthouse. She drove a luxury car. She had thousands of followers who envied her life, and she'd just learned that her entire marriage was a transaction, a business arrangement, a lie wrapped in wedding vows and Instagram filters. The woman who had humiliated her grandmother was now the one being humiliated, used, discarded like something that had served its purpose. Karma, it seemed, had perfect aim. Emily heard Daniel's office door open. His footsteps approached the kitchen. She didn't turn around. She couldn't. Something smells good, he said casually, as if he hadn't just destroyed their marriage with a phone call. You're cooking? Emily forced her hands to stop shaking. She picked up the knife and resumed chopping vegetables, the blade moving in mechanical rhythm against the cutting board. Yes, she said, her voice somehow steady. Salmon. Great, I'm starving. He opened the refrigerator, pulled out a beer. I have to go out for a bit after dinner. Last-minute meeting. Of course he did. No problem, Emily said. Daniel leaned against the counter, scrolling through his phone. How was your day? The question was so absurd, so perfectly ordinary, that Emily almost laughed. How was her day? She'd just learned her husband was cheating on her and planning to leave her once his business deal closed. She'd learned that she was nothing more than a prop in his carefully constructed life. Fine, she said. Busy. Good. He stayed there for another moment, drinking his beer, completely oblivious to the fact that Emily's world had just collapsed. Then he wandered back toward the living room, leaving her alone with the knife and the vegetables and the truth. Emily finished preparing dinner with steady hands. They ate together at the dining table like they did most nights, making small talk about nothing. Daniel complimented the salmon. Emily smiled and thanked him. He left an hour later, claiming his meeting couldn't wait. Emily watched him go, watched the elevator doors close on his perfectly tailored suit and his perfectly crafted lies. Then she walked to the windows and looked out at the city. Somewhere out there, her grandmother was probably having dinner in her small house, maybe reading a book, maybe watching television, living a simple, honest life. Emily had thrown that away, pushed away the one person who had loved her without conditions, without transactions, without ulterior motives. And for what? For this. For a man who saw her as a business opportunity, for a life that looked perfect in photographs but felt hollow in every moment between them. Emily pressed her forehead against the cold glass and closed her eyes. She'd spent years running from her past, convinced that success and status would fill the empty spaces inside her. She'd believed that marrying Daniel meant she'd finally arrived at the life she deserved. But standing in her expensive penthouse, wearing her expensive clothes, living her expensive lie, Emily finally understood something she should have known all along. She'd traded everything real for something that only looked real, and now there was no way back. Daniel filed for divorce 3 weeks later. He didn't even have the decency to tell her himself. His lawyer called on a Wednesday morning while Emily was reviewing a client presentation. The voice on the other end was professional, detached, explaining that Mr. Hayes had decided to dissolve the marriage and that papers would be delivered by the end of the day. Emily sat at her desk, the phone pressed to her ear, and felt nothing. The numbness had started the night of the phone call and never quite lifted. She'd spent the past weeks going through the motions, watching Daniel come and go, eating meals across from a stranger, sleeping in the same bed as someone who'd never really been her husband at all. "Mrs. Hayes," the lawyer said, "do you understand?" "Yes," Emily replied. "I understand." The papers arrived at 4 in the afternoon. Emily signed them without reading most of the details. What was the point? Daniel's lawyers had crafted everything long before she'd overheard that phone call. The prenuptial agreement she'd barely glanced at during their engagement now revealed itself as the cage it had always been. She got the car, some jewelry, a small cash settlement that seemed generous until she realized it wouldn't cover 6 months of rent in any decent neighborhood. Daniel kept the penthouse, the investments, the vacation properties, the connections. He kept everything that mattered. Within a week, Emily had moved her belongings into a short-term rental across town. The apartment was fine, nothing special, but after the penthouse, it felt like a closet. She told herself it was temporary. She had her business, she had clients, she'd rebuild. Then the calls started. First, it was the boutique hotel chain in Seattle. "We've decided to go in a different direction." Then the tech startup in Beaverton. "We're bringing our marketing in-house." Then the winery in Willamette Valley. Budget constraints. One by one, her clients disappeared. Emily spent entire days on the phone, trying to understand what was happening. Finally, one former client, a woman she'd considered almost a friend, told her the truth over coffee. "Daniel's been making calls," she said quietly, glancing around as if afraid of being overheard. "Nothing explicit, nothing you could prove, just suggestions that working with you might not be in people's best interests, that you're difficult, unstable, that the divorce was messy because of issues on your end." Emily stared at her coffee. "That's not true." "I know," the woman said, "but he's connected, Emily. People listen when he talks. I'm sorry." Within 2 months, Emily's business was gone. Not bankrupt officially, but effectively dead. No clients meant no income. No income meant no ability to pay for the office space she'd been renting, or the freelancers she'd hired, or any of the expenses that came with running a company. She dissolved the LLC on a grey Tuesday in February, sitting in a lawyer's office that smelled like old coffee and defeat. Her savings drained faster than she'd thought possible. Rent, utilities, the car payment she couldn't afford to keep up. She sold the jewelry Daniel had given her, pieces she'd once posted about on Instagram with captions about being blessed. The money helped, but not enough. Her friends, The women she'd had brunch with and attended galas beside stopped returning her calls. Invitations dried up. Group chats went silent. She'd see their Instagram posts, the same parties and events continuing without her, and understand that she'd never really been part of that world. She'd been Daniel's wife. Without him, she was nobody. By spring, Emily couldn't afford her apartment anymore. She sold the car, paid off what she could, and packed her remaining belongings into 2 suitcases and 3 boxes. There was only one place she could afford to go, the only place that would take her, home. The bus ride from Portland to Riverside took 4 hours. Emily sat by the window, watching the landscape shift from city to suburbs to farmland, feeling like she was traveling backward through time, through all the years she'd spent trying to escape. Riverside looked exactly as she'd left it. Small, quiet. The kind of town where everyone knew everyone else's business, where nothing much changed except the seasons. Main Street still had the same shops. The old theater still showed movies on weekends. The diner where she'd worked as a teenager still had the faded awning. Emily found a room for rent above the hardware store, advertised on a card in the post office window. The landlord, an elderly man named Mr. Patterson, looked her up and down with kind eyes. "Are you Margaret's granddaughter?" he said. "I remember you." Emily's throat tightened. "Yes. Room's yours if you want it. $300 a month, first and last up front." It was all she could afford. She handed him the cash and took the key. The room was tiny, one window overlooking Main Street, a hot plate for cooking. A bathroom down the hall she shared with 2 other tenants. The bed creaked when she sat on it. The walls were thin enough to hear conversations from neighboring rooms. Emily set her suitcases on the floor and looked around at the space that would be her home. She'd come full circle, from Margaret's small house to the penthouse and back to a room that reminded her painfully of where she'd started. Except this time, she had no grandmother waiting with warm meals and patient love. She'd destroyed that bridge herself. The next morning, Emily put on her last decent outfit and walked into the Riverside Diner. The same red vinyl booths, the same black and white checkered floor, the same smell of coffee and bacon that had been there since she was 16. The owner, Linda, recognized her immediately. "Emily Carter. Haven't seen you in years." "I'm back," Emily said, the words tasting like ash. "I'm looking for work." Linda studied her for a moment. Emily knew what she saw. A woman who'd left this town with her nose in the air, who'd posted pictures of her glamorous life for years, who'd acted like Riverside wasn't good enough for her. "Can you start tomorrow?" Linda asked. Emily's eyes stung. "Yes. 6 in the morning. Uniforms provided." Emily nodded, not trusting her voice. She walked out of the diner and down Main Street, past shops she'd once dismissed as provincial and boring. She saw people she'd gone to school with, people she'd lost touch with the moment she'd left for Portland. Some nodded at her, others looked away. They all knew. Small towns always knew when someone fell. That evening, Emily sat in her tiny room and opened her phone. Her Instagram was still there, frozen in time. The last post was from 3 months ago, a carefully filtered photo of a latte with the caption, "Grateful for this beautiful life." The comments were full of heart emojis and supportive messages from people who didn't know her at all. Emily scrolled back through the feed. Her wedding, the honeymoon, the penthouse, the restaurants and trips and carefully curated moments that had all been a lie. She thought about deleting it all, but instead, she just closed the app and set the phone face down. Outside her window, Riverside settled into evening. Streetlights flickered on. A few cars passed. Someone laughed on the sidewalk below. Emily lay back on the creaking bed and stared at the water-stained ceiling. She'd lost everything: her marriage, her business, her home, her pride. The only thing she'd thrown away that had actually mattered, she'd thrown away herself. And now, living in the same town as her grandmother, she didn't even have the courage to walk past her house. Some bridges, once burned, left scars too deep to cross again. Summer arrived in Riverside the way it always did, slow and warm, turning the fields gold and the lake into a mirror of blue sky. Emily had been back for 4 months. 4 months of waking before dawn to serve breakfast at the diner. 4 months of sore feet and coffee-stained aprons, and customers who sometimes recognized her and sometimes didn't. 4 months of living in a room barely big enough to turn around in, listening to the sounds of other people's lives through paper-thin walls. She'd developed a routine: wake at 5, walk to the diner, work until 2, walk home, sleep, repeat. The routine kept her moving, kept her from thinking too much about the penthouse she'd lost, or the business that had crumbled, or the husband who'd used her and discarded her like a signed contract that had outlived its usefulness. Most days the routine worked, but some days, usually when she had the afternoon off, Emily found herself walking, just walking, with no destination in mind, trying to fill the empty hours before she had to return to her room and face another evening alone. Her walks often took her past familiar places, the high school where she'd studied so hard, determined to escape, the library where Margaret used to take her every Saturday, the park where they'd had picnics when Emily was small, before she'd grown too cool for such simple pleasures. She never walked past her grandmother's house. That felt like a line she couldn't cross. Not yet, maybe not ever. Instead, Emily found herself drawn to the edge of town, where Riverside met the lake. There was a path that wound along the water, shaded by old oak trees, peaceful and quiet. She discovered it during her first week back and had returned to it often, finding something calming about the steady lap of water against the shore. On a particularly warm afternoon in late June, Emily took her usual route. The path curved away from the main road, following the natural bend of the lake. She walked slowly, in no hurry to return to her room, letting the breeze off the water cool her skin. That's when she noticed something different. Just off the path, set back among a grove of trees, stood the old Victorian mansion. Emily had always known it was there. Everyone in Riverside knew about the Ashford estate, as locals called it. The house had been built at the turn of the century by some wealthy family from back east. It had sat abandoned for as long as Emily could remember, windows boarded up, paint peeling, gardens overgrown with weeds. She used to dream about it when she was younger. Imagined what it would be like to host a wedding there, with the lake as a backdrop, the grand staircase perfect for photographs. She'd even mentioned it to Margaret once, spinning fantasies about a future celebration in a place that beautiful. Margaret had smiled and said, "Someday, sweetheart, when you find someone who deserves you." Emily had found someone, and he deserved nothing. But now, as she stood on the path, something was different about the old mansion. The boards were gone from the windows. Fresh white paint gleamed on the exterior. The wraparound porch had been rebuilt, its railings straight and new. Scaffolding still stood against one side of the house, and she could hear the distant sound of power tools. Emily stepped closer, curiosity pulling her forward. The gardens were being restored. Someone had cleared the weeds and planted new flowers. Rose bushes lined a stone walkway that led to the front entrance. The grass had been mowed, revealing the property's original landscaping, elegant and carefully planned. A large banner hung across the front gate, crisp and professional. Grand opening of Lakeview Event Hall. New ownership, August 15th. Emily stared at the banner, something twisting in her chest. Someone had bought the estate. Someone had turned her childhood dream into reality, except it wasn't hers. It would never be hers. She should have kept walking, should have left well enough alone, but her feet carried her forward, through the open gate, up the newly laid stone path. The front door stood propped open. Inside she could hear voices, the sound of work being done. Against her better judgment, Emily climbed the porch steps and peered through the doorway. The interior took her breath away. The entrance hall had been completely restored. Original hardwood floors gleamed under fresh polish. A crystal chandelier, clearly antique but newly cleaned, hung from the vaulted ceiling. The curved staircase swept upward, its banister smooth and perfect. Through open doorways, she could see what must be the main ballroom, large and elegant, with tall windows offering views of the lake. It was everything Emily had imagined when she was young, everything she dreamed of before her dreams had turned bitter. "Can I help you?" Emily jumped. A man in work clothes stood in the hallway holding a clipboard, looking at her with polite curiosity. "I'm sorry," Emily said quickly. "I was just walking by. I saw the banner. This place is beautiful." The man smiled. "It is, isn't it? 3 months of work, but it's coming together. Owner's got great vision." "What kind of events will it host?" Emily asked, though she already knew from the banner. "Weddings, mostly. Corporate events. Big celebrations opening in August. Already got bookings lined up." Emily nodded, suddenly feeling like an intruder. "Well, it looks wonderful. Good luck with everything." She turned to leave, but the man called after her. "You should come to the open house next month. Owner's planning a big community event. Show everyone what we've done with the place." "Maybe," Emily said, though she knew she wouldn't. She walked back down the path, through the gate, back to the lakeside trail. But she couldn't stop thinking about the mansion, about how someone else had taken something abandoned and made it beautiful again, had seen potential where everyone else saw ruin. The irony wasn't lost on her. Emily returned to the mansion 3 more times over the next 2 weeks. She told herself she was just curious, that it had nothing to do with the strange pull she felt toward the place, or the way it reminded her of who she used to be before ambition had poisoned her. Each time the property looked better, more complete. The gardens filled in, the exterior painting finished, furniture being delivered through the front entrance. On her 4th visit, Emily arrived just as the sun was setting, painting the lake in shades of orange and gold. The mansion glowed in the evening light, its windows reflecting the water, looking like something out of a fairy tale. She stood at the gate, hands wrapped around the iron bars, and let herself imagine for just a moment what it would have been like if things had been different. If she'd been different. If she'd married someone who loved her. If she'd kept her grandmother close instead of pushing her away. If she'd built a life on something real instead of something that looked good in photographs. Emily didn't hear the footsteps behind her, didn't sense another presence until a familiar voice spoke, gentle and impossibly near. It turned out beautifully, didn't it? Emily's heart stopped. She knew that voice, would know it anywhere, in any crowd, after any amount of time. Slowly, afraid of what she'd see, Emily turned around. And there, standing on the path in the golden evening light, was Margaret. For a moment, Emily couldn't breathe. Margaret stood 3 feet away, real and solid, and impossibly present. She wore a simple blue dress, her grey hair pulled back neatly, her hands folded in front of her. She looked different than Emily remembered, healthier. Her face had more colour. Her posture was straighter, more confident. There was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before, something that looked like peace. Emily's mouth opened, but no words came out. Her hands released the gate, falling uselessly to her sides. "Grandma," she finally managed, her voice cracking on the word. Margaret's expression remained calm, gentle, but guarded. "Hello, Emily." The sound of her own name spoken in that familiar voice broke something loose inside Emily. Tears spilled down her cheeks before she could stop them. "I didn't know you'd be here. I didn't know you were..." She gestured helplessly at the mansion behind her. "That I owned it?" Margaret finished softly. Emily stared. "You own this?" Margaret nodded. "I do." The words didn't make sense. Emily's mind scrambled to understand. Her grandmother, who'd worked as a housekeeper her entire life, who'd lived in a modest house and worried about every bill, who'd worn a faded lilac dress to a wedding because it was the best she had, owned a Victorian estate on the lake. How? Emily whispered. Margaret looked past Emily at the mansion, her eyes taking in the restored beauty with quiet satisfaction. My sister Beatrice passed away 2 years ago. We hadn't spoken in decades. Our own foolish pride kept us apart. She paused, pain flickering across her face. She left me everything in her will. More money than I'd ever imagined. Said in a letter that she regretted the years we'd lost and hoped I'd use it to find some happiness. Emily wiped at her tears, trying to process this information. Margaret had a sister, had money, had bought this entire property. I didn't know what to do with it at first, Margaret continued. I was grieving, angry at myself for letting stubbornness cost me time with my only sibling. She turned her gaze back to Emily. Then I walked past this place one day and remembered something. A little girl who used to talk about hosting her wedding here someday, who saw beauty in abandoned things. Emily's chest tightened. I thought maybe I could take something broken and make it whole again, Margaret said. Maybe that would be a good use of the gift my sister gave me. When did you buy it? Emily asked. About a year ago. Started renovations last winter. Margaret's expression shifted, something knowing entering her eyes. I heard you'd come back to town. Linda at the diner mentioned you were working there. Of course she knew. This was Riverside. Everyone knew everything. I've been here 4 months, Emily said quietly, shame burning through her. 4 months in the same town, and she hadn't once tried to see her grandmother, hadn't apologized, hadn't done anything except avoid the confrontation she deserved to face. I know, Margaret said simply. They stood in silence for a moment, the evening settling around them. A bird called from somewhere in the trees. The lake lapped softly against the shore. Emily couldn't hold it in anymore. The words burst out like water through a broken dam. I'm so sorry. Grandma, I'm so sorry. What I said at the wedding, how I treated you, all the years before that when I was too proud to... Her voice broke. You gave me everything. You raised me when no one else wanted me. You worked so hard so I could have opportunities, and I repaid you by being ashamed of you, by pushing you away, by telling you that you didn't belong. Margaret listened without interrupting, her face composed but not cold. I thought I was so smart, Emily continued, words tumbling over each other. I thought success meant money and status and impressing people who didn't even care about me. I married a man who used me. I built a business on his connections, and it fell apart the second he decided I wasn't useful anymore. I lost everything because I built my life on nothing real. She took a shaking breath. And the whole time, the only real thing I ever had, I threw away. I threw you away. Like you were something to be embarrassed about, instead of the person who loved me when I had nothing to offer but myself. Margaret's eyes glistened, but she remained standing where she was, maintaining the distance between them. I don't expect you to forgive me, Emily said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I don't deserve it, but I need you to know that I understand now. I understand what I lost, what I destroyed, and I would give anything to take it back. The silence that followed felt eternal. Emily waited, her heart hammering, prepared for rejection, prepared for Margaret to tell her it was too late, that some wounds cut too deep, that Emily had made her choice at that wedding and now had to live with it. Instead, Margaret stepped forward. I forgave you long ago, child, she said, her voice steady but thick with emotion. I forgave you the night you sent me away. I forgave you on every birthday you didn't call, every holiday you didn't visit. I forgave you because that's what love does. Emily's legs nearly gave out. But, Margaret continued, her tone firming, forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. It doesn't undo the years or the hurt or the choices that brought you here. You lost much, Emily. Your marriage, your business, your pride, and those losses taught you something I couldn't. What? Emily whispered. That success built on pride collapses. That photographs fade. That the only thing worth having in this life is genuine connection with people who matter. Margaret's expression softened. You had to fall to understand what holding you up actually meant. Emily couldn't hold herself together anymore. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around her grandmother, sobbing into her shoulder the way she used to when she was small and the world felt too big and scary. Margaret held her. Not immediately, but after a moment her arms came up and encircled Emily with the same warmth, the same steadiness that had been there throughout Emily's childhood, the same love that had never actually left, despite everything. They stood there as the sun finished setting, as the sky turned from gold to purple to deep blue. Emily cried for everything she'd lost and everything she'd thrown away, and everything she finally understood was worth keeping. When she could breathe again, she pulled back and looked at her grandmother through blurred vision. "Can I see it, the inside?" Margaret studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Come on." She led Emily through the gate, up the stone path, onto the porch. The mansion's interior was even more beautiful up close. Every detail had been carefully restored. The chandelier sparkled, the floors gleamed, fresh flowers sat in vases on side tables. Margaret walked Emily through each room, explaining the restoration process, the decisions she'd made, the vision she'd had for the space. She spoke with quiet pride about employing local craftsmen, about using sustainable materials, about creating something that would serve the community. In the main ballroom, Emily stopped and turned in a slow circle. Tall windows framed the lake view. The ceiling soared overhead, painted a soft cream. It was perfect for weddings, for celebrations, for all the moments people wanted to remember. "You did this," Emily said, awe in her voice. "You created something incredible." "I had help," Margaret said. "Good people who believed in the vision." Emily looked at her grandmother, really looked at her, and saw someone she'd never fully appreciated before. Not a simple housekeeper, not someone to be pitied or hidden, but a woman of strength and wisdom, someone who'd taken pain and turned it into purpose, who'd used an unexpected gift to build something beautiful, someone Emily had been too blind and arrogant to see. "I'm working at the diner," Emily said suddenly, "making minimum wage, living in a room above the hardware store. I have nothing to offer you, but if you'd let me, if there's any way I could help here, I'd work for free. I'd do anything, just to be part of what you've built, just to learn from you." Margaret was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching Emily's face. "Not for free," she finally said. "That wouldn't be right. But yes, if you're serious, if you're willing to work hard and be humble and treat people with respect, then yes, I could use the help." Emily's breath caught. "Really? Really?" Margaret's expression grew serious. "But understand this, Emily. Working here means being kind to everyone who walks through that door. It means putting others first. It means serving with grace even when you're tired. Even when things don't go your way, can you do that?" Emily thought about the wedding where she'd turned away the woman who loved her, about the years of chasing status and treating her grandmother like an inconvenience, about the person she'd been and the person she needed to become. "I can try," she said honestly. "I'll mess up sometimes, but I want to try. I want to be better." Margaret nodded slowly. "That's all any of us can do, try to be better than we were yesterday." She extended her hand, formal and businesslike. Emily took it, feeling the familiar warmth of her grandmother's palm against hers. "Then welcome to Lakeview Event Hall," Margaret said. "We open in 6 weeks, there's a lot of work to do." Emily held her grandmother's hand and felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Emily's first day at Lakeview Event Hall began at 6 in the morning. She arrived to find Margaret already there, standing in the main ballroom with a clipboard and a cup of tea, reviewing a checklist with 2 contractors. Margaret glanced up when Emily entered, nodded once, and gestured to a supply closet near the kitchen. "There are cleaning supplies in there," Margaret said calmly. "The upstairs guest suites need to be dusted and mopped. Windows too. We're showing the space to potential clients this afternoon." Emily had expected something like this, but hearing it still stung slightly. Not because the work was beneath her, but because it reminded her so clearly of where she'd started and how far she'd fallen. Her grandmother had spent decades cleaning other people's homes. Now Emily would clean hers. The irony was almost poetic. "Of course," Emily said. She found the supplies and carried them upstairs. The guest suites were beautiful, each one decorated differently, designed for wedding parties to prepare before ceremonies. Emily worked methodically, dusting furniture, wiping down mirrors, mopping floors until they shone. Her back ached. Her hands grew red from the cleaning solutions, but she didn't stop. Through the windows, she could see the lake sparkling in the morning sun. Workers moved across the grounds, finishing landscaping projects, installing lighting along the pathways. Everything was coming together for the grand opening. Margaret appeared in the doorway of the third suite around noon. She surveyed the room with a critical eye, checking corners, running a finger along a windowsill. Then she nodded. "Good work. Take a lunch break. 30 minutes. Emily ate a sandwich she'd packed that morning, sitting on the back porch overlooking the water. Margaret joined her, bringing her own lunch, and they ate in comfortable silence. It reminded Emily of the dinners they used to share, before she'd grown too self-important for simple moments. "The clients coming this afternoon are a young couple," Margaret said eventually. "First wedding. They're nervous about costs. I want you to sit in on the consultation. Listen, learn how we talk to people." Emily looked up, surprised. "You want me there? If you're going to work here, you need to understand what we do." Margaret's expression was firm, but not unkind. "This isn't just about clean floors and pretty flowers. It's about making people feel valued on one of the most important days of their lives." The consultation that afternoon was a revelation. The couple, barely in their 20s, arrived holding hands and looking overwhelmed. Margaret greeted them warmly, offered refreshments, and walked them through the space without any pressure. She asked questions about their vision, their families, what mattered most to them. When they mentioned their budget concerns, Margaret didn't dismiss them or push expensive packages. Instead, she found creative solutions, suggested weekday dates with lower rates, offered to work with their preferred vendors instead of requiring in-house services, made them feel heard rather than sold to. By the end of the hour, the couple was smiling, relaxed, already imagining their wedding day. After they left, Margaret turned to Emily. "What did you notice?" Emily thought carefully. "You listened more than you talked. You made it about them, not about making money." "Exactly," Margaret said. "People remember how you make them feel, not the chandelier or the flowers, the feeling." It was a lesson Emily should have learned years ago. The weeks before the grand opening blurred together in a rhythm of hard work. Emily arrived early and left late. She cleaned, organized, set up chairs, arranged flowers, answered phones. Margaret paid her fairly, more than the diner had, and Emily saved every penny. But more than the work itself, Emily began to understand something deeper. She watched Margaret interact with vendors, treating the florist with the same respect as the high-end caterer. She saw her grandmother handle a difficult client with patience and grace when the woman changed her mind 3 times about table arrangements. She noticed how Margaret remembered small details about people, asking about someone's sick parent or congratulating another on a graduation. Margaret led with kindness, not weakness, not pushover niceness, but genuine respect for every person who walked through the door. It was everything Emily had failed to be. One evening, about 3 weeks before the opening, Emily stayed late to finish inventory. She was in the storage room counting linens when she heard voices from the hall room. Margaret was showing the space to a bride and her mother. Emily couldn't help but listen. "My daughter wants everything perfect," the mother was saying, her voice tight with stress. "She's been dreaming of this day since she was little." "Of course," Margaret replied gently. "Every bride deserves to feel special." "But I'm worried," the mother continued. My mother, her grandmother, she's getting older. She's not as mobile as she used to be. I'm afraid she'll feel out of place. That people will stare. Emily's breath caught. Let me tell you something, Margaret said, her voice carrying clearly through the hall. I've seen many weddings in my life. The ones that matter, the ones people remember years later, aren't about perfection. They're about love, about including the people who shaped you. There was a pause. Your daughter's grandmother helped raise her, Margaret asked. Yes, the mother said. She was there for everything. Then she belongs at the center of that celebration, Margaret said firmly. Not hidden away, not made to feel less than. The woman who loved your daughter when she was small deserves to see her joy. Trust me on this. Emily pressed her hand over her mouth, tears streaming silently down her face. We'll make sure she's comfortable, Margaret continued. Special seating if she needs it, whatever makes her feel honored, because that's what grandmothers deserve. The conversation moved on to other details, but Emily couldn't hear anymore. She sank down onto a box of tablecloths and cried quietly, mourning the grandmother she'd dishonored and the grace she was only now beginning to understand. When she'd composed herself, she finished the inventory and found Margaret in the office, reviewing contracts. Can I ask you something? Emily said from the doorway. Margaret looked up. Of course. Why did you give me this chance after everything I did? You could have turned me away, told me I made my choice. Why didn't you? Margaret set down her pen and leaned back in her chair. Because I remember who you were before the world told you that kindness was weakness. I remember a little girl who cried when she saw a hurt bird, who shared her lunch with classmates who had none, who dreamed big but still said thank you. She paused, her eyes searching Emily's face. So that girl is still in there. She just got lost for a while. I'm betting she can find her way back. Emily's throat tightened. What if I can't? What if I'm too broken? We're all broken, child, Margaret said softly. That's not what defines us. What defines us is whether we use our broken pieces to cut others or to build something new. Emily nodded, unable to speak. You're doing good work here, Margaret continued. Not just the cleaning and organizing, the real work. The work of becoming someone you can be proud of. That matters more than any business success ever could. The grand opening arrived on a perfect August morning. The property looked like something from a dream. White tents dotted the lawn for the community celebration. Tables overflowed with food donated by local restaurants. A band played near the lake. People came from all over Riverside and beyond to see what Margaret had created. Emily worked the event in a simple black dress, directing parking, greeting guests, helping wherever needed. She saw people she'd gone to school with, people who'd watched her fall. Some looked at her with pity, others with curiosity, a few with barely concealed satisfaction at her comeuppance. Emily smiled at all of them and asked if they needed anything. Near sunset, when the crowd had thinned and the band played soft jazz, Margaret found Emily clearing plates from a table. Leave that, Margaret said. Come with me. She led Emily into the empty ballroom. The space glowed in the golden evening light, peaceful and beautiful. I have a proposition, Margaret said. I need a co-manager, someone who understands the business side, but also understands people, someone who's learned what matters. The job is yours if you want it. Emily stared at her grandmother, certain she'd misheard. Co-manager. Equal partner in running this place. Not ownership, not yet. But real responsibility, real authority, real purpose. Margaret's expression was serious. You've earned it, Emily. These past weeks, I've watched you work harder than I've ever seen you work. More importantly, I've watched you treat people with kindness. That's worth more than any business degree. Emily's eyes filled with tears for what felt like the 100th time since she'd come home. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Margaret said simply. Say you'll help me turn this place into something that matters, not just a business, but a space where people feel valued, where love is celebrated, where families come together instead of falling apart. Emily thought about the penthouse she'd lost, the business that had crumbled, the marriage that had been a lie. All of it had seemed so important once. None of it had been real. This was real. This mattered. "Yes," Emily whispered. "Yes, I'll help you." Margaret smiled, and for the first time since the wedding, Emily saw pride in her grandmother's eyes. Not pride in achievements or status or anything external, pride in who Emily was becoming. They stood together in the ballroom as the sun set over the lake, two women who'd found each other again after being lost. The work ahead would be hard. There would be difficult days and challenging clients and moments of doubt. But they would face it together, and that made all the difference. 1 year later, Emily stood in the doorway of the bridal suite watching a young woman named Sarah adjust her veil in the mirror. The suite was filled with soft afternoon light, the kind that made everything look like it belonged in a painting. Sarah's bridesmaids fussed around her, fixing the train of her dress, touching up makeup, laughing nervously. It was the energy Emily had come to know well, that mix of excitement and terror that came before walking down the aisle. "You look beautiful," Emily said, stepping into the room with a bottle of champagne. "Compliments of Lakeview." Sarah turned, her face breaking into a radiant smile. "Thank you for everything. This place is exactly what I dreamed of." Emily poured glasses for the bridal party, making sure everyone had what they needed. Over the past year, she'd learned to anticipate problems before they happened. The forgotten bobby pins, the nervous bride who needed reassurance, the flower girl who needed a distraction. She'd become good at making people feel taken care of. As she worked, Emily caught her reflection in the mirror and barely recognized herself. Her clothes were simple but professional. Her hair was pulled back practically. She wore minimal makeup. But there was something different in her eyes, something that hadn't been there during her own wedding. Peace, maybe, or purpose. She certainly didn't look like the woman who'd once stood in a designer gown, surrounded by crystal and champagne, feeling hollow inside. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said suddenly. Emily looked up. "Of course." "My grandmother is downstairs," Sarah said, her voice soft. "She's 86. She raised me after my parents died. She's the most important person in my life." Emily's chest tightened. She knew where this was going. "My fiancé's mother keeps making comments," Sarah continued, "about how Grandma dresses, about her walker, about how she might not look good in the photos." Her eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to do. I want her there, but I don't want my wedding to be full of tension." Emily set down the champagne bottle and moved closer. "May I tell you a story?" Sarah nodded. "A few years ago I got married," Emily began, her voice steady despite the pain of the memory. "It was in a place like this. Beautiful venue. Expensive everything. I thought it was the most important day of my life." The bridesmaids had quieted, listening. "My grandmother came to my wedding wearing the best dress she owned. It was old and faded, but she wore it with love. And when she walked through the door, I was embarrassed. I told her to leave. I said she would ruin my perfect day." Sarah's hand went to her mouth. "She left," Emily continued. "She walked out into the rain, heartbroken, and I went back to my perfect wedding. Married my perfect husband. Started my perfect life." She paused. "Except none of it was perfect. My husband was using me. My marriage was a lie. Within a year, I'd lost everything. The house, the business, the friends who weren't really friends. All of it disappeared." "What happened to your grandmother?" Sarah asked quietly. Emily smiled, though her eyes were damp. "She forgave me, even though I didn't deserve it. She gave me a second chance when I came home with nothing. She taught me what actually matters in life. And now I work here with her, and I get to help people celebrate real love, real family, real connection." She looked directly at Sarah. "Your grandmother walked you through grief. She loved you when you needed it most. She shaped who you are. That woman belongs at the center of your celebration. Not hidden away because someone thinks she doesn't photograph well. Sarah wiped her eyes, mascara smudging slightly. Photographs fade, Emily said softly. They yellow and blur and eventually get stored in boxes nobody opens. But how we treat the people who love us, that remains forever. That's what you'll remember 20 years from now. Not whether everyone matched perfectly in pictures, but whether you honored the woman who earned a place by your side. One of the bridesmaids handed Sarah a tissue. Sarah dabbed at her eyes and laughed through her tears. You're right. You're absolutely right. I don't care what anyone thinks. Grandma is walking me down the aisle, and she's sitting in the front row, and anyone who has a problem with it can leave. Emily squeezed her hand. Good. That's exactly right. She left the bridal suite and headed downstairs, where the ceremony would begin in 30 minutes. The ballroom was arranged perfectly. White chairs in neat rows, flowers everywhere. The lake visible through the windows, sparkling in the afternoon sun. Margaret stood near the entrance, speaking with the photographer. When she saw Emily, she smiled and waved her over. Everything good upstairs? Margaret asked. Everything's perfect, Emily said. Sarah's ready. They stood together, surveying the space they'd built. In the past year, Lakeview had hosted 43 weddings, 15 corporate events, and countless celebrations. They'd been featured in a regional magazine. Couples came from hours away, specifically because of their reputation for making people feel valued. But for Emily, the success wasn't measured in bookings or revenue. It was measured in moments like the one upstairs, in being able to share hard-won wisdom, in helping someone avoid the mistakes she'd made. I saw Sarah's grandmother earlier, Margaret said. Lovely woman, she was worried about using her walker during the ceremony. What did you tell her? I told her that the people who matter won't care, and the people who care don't matter. Margaret's eyes twinkled. Then I showed her the ramp we installed last month, made sure she knows she's welcome exactly as she is. Emily felt her throat tighten with gratitude. This was what they'd built together, not just a venue, but a space that honored what was real. The ceremony began on time. Sarah walked down the aisle with her grandmother beside her, the walker decorated with white ribbons and flowers. Some guests smiled, a few whispered. But Sarah's face glowed with joy and pride, and her grandmother beamed with tears streaming down her weathered cheeks. Emily watched from the back, remembering her own walk down a different aisle, remembering the grandmother she'd turned away. The shame of it would probably never fully leave her, but she'd learned to transform it into something useful, something that could help others. After the ceremony, during the reception, Emily was refilling water glasses when an older woman approached her. She looked to be in her 70s, elegantly dressed, with kind eyes. "Excuse me," the woman said. "Are you Emily, the co-manager?" "Yes," Emily said. "Is there something you need?" "I just wanted to thank you," the woman said. "I'm Sarah's grandmother's best friend. She told me what you said to Sarah earlier, about photographs fading but kindness remaining." The woman's eyes glistened. "My own granddaughter is getting married next year. She's been making noises about keeping things small, keeping certain family members away because they don't fit her image. I'm going to tell her your story, with your permission." Emily felt something warm spread through her chest. "Of course, please tell her, and tell her that I learned the hard way so maybe she doesn't have to." The woman squeezed her hand and moved back to her table. As the evening wound down, Emily found herself on the back porch taking a moment of quiet. The lake reflected the stars. Music drifted from inside where the last few guests were dancing. It had been a long day, but a good one. Margaret joined her, 2 cups of tea in hand. She passed one to Emily and they stood in comfortable silence, sipping and watching the water. "You did well today," Margaret said eventually. "We did well," Emily corrected. "This place, everything it is, that's because of you." "It's because of us," Margaret said firmly. "You bring something to this work that I can't. You understand what it's like to lose your way and find it again. People sense that. They trust you because you've been where they are." Emily thought about the woman she'd been, the one who'd chased status and Instagram likes and approval from people who didn't matter. That woman felt like a stranger now, someone she'd known a long time ago but couldn't quite relate to anymore. "Do you think people can really change?" Emily asked. "Or do we just become better at hiding who we are?" Margaret considered the question. "I think people change when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the fear of becoming different. You changed because you had to, because everything else had been stripped away and you finally saw what was real." "I wish I'd seen it sooner," Emily said quietly, "before I hurt you, before I wasted so much time being someone I'm not proud of." "We all wish we could redo parts of our past," Margaret said, "but we can't. We can only decide what we do with today, with tomorrow, with the time we have left." She turned to Emily, her expression serious but warm. "You're using your time well now, helping people, building something that matters, making sure other young women don't make your mistakes. That's redemption, child. Not erasing the past, but learning from it." Inside, the band played one last song. Through the windows, Emily could see Sarah dancing with her grandmother, both of them laughing, the walker abandoned at a nearby table. That image, Emily knew, would stay with Sarah forever. Not the flowers or the dress or the expensive decorations, but that moment of genuine joy and connection with the woman who'd raised her. Emily pulled out her phone and took a picture, not for Instagram or to show off, but to remember, to remind herself what success actually looked like. "Thank you," she said to Margaret, "for giving me another chance, for showing me what matters, for being patient while I figured it out." "Thank you for coming home," Margaret replied, "for having the courage to admit you were wrong, for working to become better. That takes more strength than most people have." They finished their tea as the last guests departed. The catering staff cleaned up efficiently. The lights in the ballroom dimmed one by one until only the pathway lights remained, reflecting off the lake like scattered stars. Emily locked the front door while Margaret set the alarm. They walked to their cars together, the gravel crunching under their feet. "Same time tomorrow?" Margaret asked. "Same time," Emily confirmed. She drove home to her small apartment, the one she'd moved into 6 months ago, when she could finally afford to leave the room above the hardware store. It wasn't fancy, just a one-bedroom with a little kitchen and a view of Main Street. But it was hers, earned through honest work and humble effort. Emily made herself a simple dinner and ate it at her small table. No Instagram photos, no performance, just a quiet meal after a long day. Before bed, she opened her laptop and looked at the booking calendar for next month. 15 events scheduled, each one a celebration, each one a chance to help people honor what mattered. She thought about Sarah and her grandmother, about the woman who'd stopped to thank her, about all the couples who'd walked through Lakeview's doors and felt valued, respected, celebrated for who they were rather than what they could project. This was success. Not the penthouse or the designer clothes or the carefully curated social media presence. This, genuine work, genuine connection, genuine purpose. Emily closed her laptop and got ready for bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new celebrations, new opportunities to serve. And for the first time in her life, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. If this story touched you, please share, comment, and subscribe for more heartwarming stories.